this is Samsa again from GamingOnLinux.com, and today I'm actually taking a look at Verdun again. It's been a while since I last played Verdun, and back then I liked the game, but it had some issues. So I've been told that since the new updates, the game has been a lot better, so I'm naturally taking another look. I'm mostly going to focus on new stuff, but I'll give you a quick summary of the game. So Verdun is a World War I squad-based multiplayer FPS by M2H and Blackmill Games, where you play a soldier in one of the World War I armies and you attempt to capture enemy trenches. And the game kind of sorta alternates between defense and offense, so you basically take turns capturing each other's trenches and defending your own trenches. And it offers basically all the goodness of World War I. There are muddy trenches everywhere, there are gas attacks, deadly machine guns, artillery, and of course the weapons are limited to the World War I arsenal, so basically everyone is carrying bolt-action rifles instead of having like assault rifles or whatnot. In these new updates there has been lots and lots of like cool stuff, and especially the relatively new Horrors of War updates has loads of things. It doesn't really change the basic formula, so the game is mainly the same it was before. So if you want my thoughts on the actual like base game, you might want to take a look at the old GOL cast article where I basically covered the basics. But there are new squads. There were quite a few squads before, but there are now even more. So there are the Belgians, the United States now has like squads. There are the US Marines and the Doughboys, so they carry American weaponry. And the Germans have a new Guard squad, which seems fairly normal, and they have the Pioneer squad, which carries all kinds of interesting weapons. In my opinion, the squads and the new weaponry that they carry has been quite fairly balanced. So in my opinion, especially now that the US Marines have been introduced to the game, I think the Entente forces now have a better equivalent to the Stoßtrupp from the German side, which was sort of an assault squad meant to like capture trenches. So I think the US Marines kind of balance that out, because I think they have the trench gun, which is it's a shotgun, so that's really awesome in close quarters combat. Other interesting weaponry includes the flamethrower of the Pioneer squad. So there is one flamethrower specialist in the Germans Pioneer squad, and that weapon is quite amazing. It's obviously a short-range weapon. It's meant to take out sections of the trenches. In addition to that, there are a couple of fairly normal weapons, like the Mauser pistols and Springfield rifles for the US squads and etc. And there are new maps that have been introduced in the updates between now and when I played this game way back when. But the maps, in my opinion, aren't too interesting. There is one somewhat interesting fortress map where you can fight sort of indoors a little bit, but it's still mostly trenches. Even though the game has changed somewhat, it's still basically just as hard as it used to be. The lives are very short, you will die quite a lot in this game. These new weapons actually might make it a little bit harder to actually survive, because the trench gun, for example, is quite powerful, I have found, and the flamethrower definitely also can wipe out trenches quite fast. It's not overpowered, and you only get one per squad, so it doesn't get out of hand too much. And the flamethrower can actually make you quite vulnerable, because everyone will target you when you use that thing, and it's not too powerful anyway. But yeah, like I said, the game is just as hard as ever. And I would like to remind you guys that this game can even be frustrating if you don't have the patience. Everyone dies basically from a single bullet, so you are not like a super soldier here. But there is luckily a change which kind of makes it a little bit better, thanks to the gore options. So now, instead of just falling over when you get shot, your legs and arms might be torn apart if you turn on the gore, and people won't die immediately. They will be kind of screaming before they die. So the deaths around you are basically more spectacular. So that makes it a little bit easier to spend time looking at that respawn timer. So yeah, and the moments between the respawns are definitely just as cool as they were before. One of the more important things, in my opinion, with these updates has been the improved performance. Previously the game was quite sluggish. Even on a relatively powerful 760, a GTX 760, the game was basically running quite slowly, even if you turn down the settings to lowest. However, that has now been improved, and the video you are actually looking at, that's footage captured from an R7 370, so an AMD card, on the open source drivers. There are still frame drops, and definitely the video capture affects the performance quite a bit. So it's more like, I think if without recording, it's like add 10 FPS to the number you see in the top left corner. But even while recording, the game still hits relatively high frame rates. It's performing more or less on the same level as when I recorded the previous video, which was on Nvidia. And that was recorded in 720, whereas this is actually recorded in 1080. But without the recording, it's around 60 FPS on medium graphics as opposed to lowest graphics. So I think that says quite a bit about the performance these days. Nowadays my 760 probably wouldn't have too many problems with this game. There are still some issues though. The game occasionally seems to crash. I'm not entirely sure why, but it might be my open source drivers, it's entirely possible. And it's definitely annoying when that happens. That was also a thing when the game exited early access. It was quite crashy back then. So, and I think the game was actually more crashy back then. So I think they have improved on that. Also, there aren't as many bugs. So when this game came out of early access, there were bugs like the guns suddenly not working right, nobody getting killed, and the servers were often taken down for a second to, restart everything and to get things to a more normal state. And that's definitely not a thing anymore. There are a couple of smaller bugs, like sometimes the spectator camera goes a bit crazy and it doesn't really know what to do. But these bugs that I have seen are fairly small, fairly minor. They haven't really affected my gameplay experience too much. So I think I'm fairly okay-ish on that side. Back when I last played this game, I was a little bit hesitant to, recommend this game due to the fact that it ran so slowly. It was an awesome game back then. It was simply plagued by technical difficulties. But I think most of those technicalities have been solved now. And in my opinion, this is, it's easily the best representation of World War I, and it feels authentic. There is simply no other World War I shooter like this. I don't think there is one on any platform. Not to mention on Linux we don't have that many war FPS games to begin with. And due to the fixed performance, it makes it a lot easier to recommend. So even if you are on AMD graphics, if you have something that is about the same level as an R7 370, you can probably play this game just fine, even on the open source drivers, provided that those drivers are recent enough. The player population also seems to have improved a little bit, so the servers are basically full, or at least close to being full, at least most of the time, and it's not as empty as it was before. But the game is still quite difficult, and you might get frustrated, and my tip for you is just don't get frustrated, listen to more experienced players, and just force your way through the initial learning curve, and I can promise you that you will have awesome experiences after that initial learning curve. sometimes you will die, sometimes it will feel very unfair, sometimes machine guns and such will just feel too overpowered. But in my opinion, after a while you just get used to it and things are still quite fairly balanced. I can definitely give my recommendations to this game. If you just have the patience to actually force your way through and you have sort of an interest in these kinds of games, then I mean, this is, in my opinion, an excellent game, and not many multiplayer-only games can actually get me to play them for over 40 hours. And this game definitely managed to do that, so I think that says something about the quality that we have here. But anyway, that's it for Verdun. I definitely recommend it, do check it out, and we will see in future videos.